You're listening to Sox in the Basement, a production of the Broadcast Basement Limited, where every show is 30 minutes of good and comes from a basement bar on the south side of Chicago. Pull up a stool, pour a cold one, and join us right now for Sox in the Basement. Heard everywhere podcasts can be found, and always at soxinthebasement.com. Did you see Bob Costas? Any of the Bob Costas stuff, like him covering this Yankees-Royals series? And by the way, playoff baseball is absolutely incredible, and I just wish my team was in it. But it is so much fun to watch as a fan that doesn't have a rooting interest. Some of these games have been just spectacular. The drama in the Padres and Dodgers series, the way the Mets came back, that Detroit the other night in Cleveland with the 3-run home run from Kerry Carpenter off Clase.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it's been so much fun to watch. When I miss a game, I have regret. But the thing that I've noticed is there's a little bit of an uproar over Costas because he's openly rooting for the Yankees against the Royals.
Well, makes sense. I mean, Costas is a longtime Yankees fan, right? I mean, New York guy.
Waxes poetic about him all the time, does a baseball
Absolutely.
interview. I think anybody that clearly remembers '05 remembers Chris Berman.
He was positively weepy. I mean, he spent, when it became apparent the White Sox were going to win that series, Berman spent, I think, like an inning and a half playing Memories in the background and openly weeping about what a brilliant champion the Red Sox were after all these years and how amazing they were and what an amazing team. I mean, he wouldn't shut up about it. And it was almost like by the end of the game, oh yeah, the White Sox won. But these Red Sox fought like tigers.
But you heard it all series. It's kind of like what Costas is doing. Like the Royals had a big moment in the game, and he's just upset that Giancarlo Stanton hit into a double play. Like he's just looking at it from a fan perspective. And I remember when Graffinino lets the ball through in game 2 of the ALD. Yes, that's exactly what I was going to say. He just yells, "Oh no!" Like he's beside himself with grief at that moment. When you watch the video of El Duque coming in, you just listen to this man's soul get crushed. Like that actually made it fun for me. Like I remember
right.
I was
or Tadahito Iguchi hitting one off at David Wells.
Yes, like that made it fun for me because honestly, I don't remember in game 3 with El Duque, I don't remember the sound because I was in Miller's Pub and I put this out on Twitter and it's an interesting story, so I'll share it real quick and then we'll get back to Costas. But this is an interesting story, Ed. Yeah, off-season Sox in the Basement. I just go off on tangents. Get ready for them. But I'm in '05.
Well, that's all we have.
I'm in Miller's Pub, and I'm working at the time up in Evanston. I had gotten out of radio. I was working for this place called Peel Incorporated, which, by the way, after I left it, I think that several people that were in the upper echelon went to jail for doing bad things with their company. But I had luckily gotten out of the building before that had happened. And I'm coming south, and I'm not going to make it home for the game. And my sister, I want to say, was working for the mayor's office downtown. I know she did it for a time, so I think she was with the mayor's office at the time. She might have been with the White Sox at the time because she was at one place and then she was at the other. But the two of us were not making it home before that game started. So we had a plan to meet downtown. And my buddy Joe, he's originally from Minnesota. He's a Twins fan. But his boss wanted to do like a company like bonding thing at Miller's Pub downtown under the L tracks there. And so he wanted all the architects from the firm to go there. So he's like, you can come here because I know they're going to have the game on. And I'm like, yeah, we'll come have a beer with you and watch the game. So I walk in and we're standing there watching this game in a place where everybody's rooting against the White Sox. A clear Cub bar. Like it's Cubs fans. There are guys wearing Cubs hats who came from work in their suits and put their Cubs hats on to root for the Red Sox. It's openly occurring. Like my sister and I believed at that time, and I think that it was almost completely true, believed at that time we were the only White Sox fans in the bar.
That could be. That could very well be.
So as that inning is unfolding before El Duque comes in, it's nothing but explosions of applause. Everybody wants the White Sox to fall apart. And my sister's like all fired up, right? When she goes to a ball game, man, she starts yelling. She's the perfect South Side girl. Okay, she gets fired up. And so like there's a point where I'm trying to tell her like, hey, like, Joe's with his boss. Like we can't be swearing at the screen. We don't want to be the two jerks that like embarrass him. Like he was like trying to disassociate himself with us because we were really intense watching the game with this group that was basically forced to go there by the boss because he wanted to do a team building event and watch Game 3 at the bar on a Friday. And all these young people working for this older boss, they just look miserable, like they don't want to be there. And they're going along with what the crowd is doing because the crowd is rooting for the Red Sox. And the boss is stoic. He's just sitting there, he's having a beer, he's watching the game. So El Duque comes in, gets the first out. And I, again, couldn't hear the Chris Berman call because the bar was so loud. And then El Duque gets the second out. And we're watching this. Now, my buddy, we're so intense. He is moved down to the end of this long table that this whole company had that he had invited us to because he's so embarrassed by how into the game me and my sister are. I mean, this is real. Like, we are intensely into this game. Like, the umpire would like call a ball that was that we thought was a strike, a ball, and my sister would just yell "F you" at the screen. Like, she was just so angry. I was doing it too. I don't want to throw her under the bus, but we were just intense.
You're both,
in that series. Yeah, we're intense jerk White Sox fans. Like, we're mad at the crowd. Because the crowd is rooting against us. Like, when something's happening, the crowd is picking on the two people in the White Sox gear in Miller's Pub. They are. I mean, Cub fans will tell you they don't care about us. I don't know what they feel now. I think they do, but they really cared back then. They really hated us back then. We were in their thoughts. They woke up thinking about us. They went to bed thinking about us. It bothered them until 2016. They've got trauma as a fan base, and they want to take it out on us. So El Duque gets the last guy up there, Johnny Damon. And we're just going off of body language because we're in the bar. And as he swung, I'm yelling, he swung. And she's like, I think that's an out. And then you could see him get the punch out. And my sister and I jump into each other's arms while the entire bar goes quiet because they're all cheering. Like, you could hear a pin drop except me, her, and the 65-year-old head of the architecture firm who comes running up and dives into the two of us. The guy who my friend was worried was embarrassed. Like, he was embarrassed we were being so loud. Turned out to be like a huge White Sox fan.
That's amazing.
Runs up and hugs me and my sister. And we don't even know this guy. And we're jumping around in a circle. And then all of a sudden, a fourth guy jumped into the circle as my buddy. Who now knew it was okay to support the White Sox because that's what his boss wanted.
Oh, man.
For the rest of the night, the boss started putting us on his tab. He's like, you guys are okay. He made two of the people from the firm move so we could sit with them. We celebrated the championship there, walked all the way. We mocked everybody in that bar when they won. We mocked everybody. We were yelling at all of them, you fake Chicago fans rooting against a team from your town. We yelled at all of them. But that was our moment. Now later, I get to hear what Berman sounded like. And he was so upset. He was beside himself.
Oh my gosh.
And
he totally was.
And that's what Costas is like right now. Bob Costas is just a homer. And I see people upset about it, but I get it. He's doing a national broadcast. It sounds terrible because he's upset. He would sound so much better if the Yankees were winning instead of the Royals. But when the Royals are doing something good, it's almost hard to listen to. I'm not surprised by it because I think a lot of broadcasters, if they have a childhood team, can't keep that in check. Like, I know I couldn't keep it in check, right? I mean, Hawk Harrelson couldn't keep it in check for the White Sox.
No,
there's
not
a
at
lot
all.
of people who can't keep it in check. I think that everybody being surprised that Costas is doing this has never seen an interview with him. I mean, this is a guy who bleeds Yankee pinstripes, and it's killing him when something's not going right.
Well, I just remember back when you had Joe Buck doing games, and he's very much a Cardinals guy. It's because that's where he grew up, and you have it's all over the place, where you see this. And Costas at this point, I mean, Bob Costas has been like one of the pinnacles of professional national broadcasters for so long. Honestly, he's getting up there, right? He's probably sitting there going, he wants to see another Yankees winner. It's been a long time since the Yankees actually
won. He's seen plenty in his lifetime. He's seen plenty in his lifetime.
But you know what? Admittedly, now, just because we're White Sox fans and we have this issue where we haven't seen but one and very few other opportunities in our lifetime, I think if you're a fan of any team, you are always going to be looking for that next one. And as you're getting older, you're going to be looking for that next one. And frankly, it's become something where I think the stigma amongst broadcasting circles is off for being a bit of a homer, even in a national broadcast. But I'm sure Costas probably isn't even fully aware that that's what he's doing. I mean, he might be now that people are kind of calling him out for it. I'm sure somebody's going to point out, like, Yeah, Bob, you might want to say something nice about the Royals at least once this series. Might be helpful.
Yeah, like just pretend that you're kind of even keel, just every once in a while. Sox in the Basement listeners switch to a new age of life with Hyatt Home Medical Equipment. Keep mom and dad, grandma and grandpa out of assisted living. Make it so they can get around on their own and live independently with stair lifts, ramps, grab bars, lift chairs, and even bathroom remodeling. They're going to work with your insurance. They have 0% financing for qualified individuals. If you use a CPAP machine and you're unhappy with your vendor, switch now, get supplies directly mailed to you. And Hyatt Home Medical Equipment has the latest and greatest in continuous glucose monitors. See everything that Hyatt has to offer at hhme.com.
It doesn't bother me. It is just something that I've come to expect. I mean, you watch any sport, really, maybe not hockey, but you watch the NFL, and you can't tell me that there's not announcers there who don't have favorite teams that they follow, that they've spent more time with, right?
Forget that. There are some of the refs that have favorite teams in the NFL.
100% there's some refs that have favorite teams. There's umpires that have favorite teams in baseball, too.
Some of the refs have favorite teams. Like football, I don't even consider to be a sport right now. It's like
the violence is real, but the outcome is predetermined.
Oh, come on. Like, I know this is a White Sox show, but there was a moment in the last Bears game this weekend where the Bears were on a roll, and there was a really ticky-tack, like, holding call that brought back a first down and instead put them at 2nd and 20. And even the announcers were like, I don't see anything there. They were going to win that game so handily that it was as if television was going to lose ratings. So you had to keep it close. They were on their way for another drive and another score, and they were going to make it easy. And it was like, well, we got to slow this down. We can't let them score 50. So now we're going to start making calls
fit the narrative
that slow down drives. And it goes back to the thing I talk about with baseball, too. I don't think it's as prevalent in the postseason, but we saw so many examples this year with umpires who either want to hurry a game up and expand the zone. We saw that with the White Sox, right? I mean, like the umpire was basically admitting it to Sizemore when he got thrown out of the game. Your team is terrible, so this is your strike zone. It's not even like the real strike zone. Your team is terrible, though. Right. And,
we don't care anymore.
I just believe in a world of apps and a world of quick communication and a world where betting can just be done by anybody, and you can find ways to, have a shell account or somebody that you trust be the one that's actually placing the bet. I don't trust sports right now. I don't trust officials. I don't trust sports. I don't trust players. We didn't get into the Pete Rose thing, but I do believe that Pete Rose should not be in the Hall of Fame unless they're putting Joe Jackson in. Like that whole argument.
Absolutely.
Whole argument. Well, it's lifetime, so he's dead. Yeah, same thing for Joe Jackson. Why isn't he in? Guy hit like 400 in the 1919 World Series. Clearly was not on the take. Clearly didn't do anything to try to blow any games. And they kept him out of the Hall of Fame and kicked him out of baseball for life. So until you right that wrong, miss me with your Pete Rose.
Yeah, no, I have no desire to see Pete Rose get into the Hall of Fame without Joe Jackson. You're right, and the other thing too about it is that the betting on games and betting on your own games, there's absolutely. I mean, we saw and we talked about it at the time. You and I talked about it quite a bit when Shohei Ohtani was being looked at early, preseason, and
they found a bunch of sacrificial lambs. Remember?
Yeah, there was nothing to be gained.
Yeah.
By losing Shohei Ohtani, who has gone on to have, they're calling it the greatest season in the history of baseball. 50-50 is pretty cool, but I'm not ready to give him that crown yet. But, there's nothing to be gained from it. Pete Rose, that scandal, that was from a time when I think the game still had more designs on its purity. But now, you're right, now that you can have a parlay bet in the middle of a game, okay, you can go over or under on strikeouts once you already have something established for the rest of the game. You can do all sorts of things.
Think about some of the bets. You're a player, and you know that there's an over-under on your hits, and it's a game that doesn't matter to you, and it's whether and you can control the outcome of it. Nobody could even prove if you were doing that. That's the thing. Some of these little in-game bets and these proposition bets that happen before the game. An individual player could control the outcome and nobody would be able to tell what he's doing. And so, and same thing with umpires. Umpires can miss one or two calls. That's all they can. You can make a difference in a game with one or two calls at the right point and you can change it. The betting thing to me has cheapened sports. And the thing is, I think when you watch sports, any sport, including baseball, but any sport, if it doesn't affect the outcome negatively against you, you don't notice it. You really notice it when it affects you. When you see something, you're like, whoa, what's going on here? The thing is, it's happening all the time. You just only notice it more when it goes against you. And so that's why I don't think that people get caught. I mean, the idea that Major League Baseball during the Ohtani thing found 5 guys who had nothing really to offer the sport that they could give BS punishments to and then champion that they're looking at betting. And they release it right after they say that Ohtani's clear. And then what's funny is they don't catch anybody else for the rest of the year. Nobody else got caught.
Right.
Did you hear of anybody else getting caught? So you're telling me that randomly, after I have heard of nobody getting caught betting, they found 5 guys and lined them up. It's like after the Kennedy assassination. Let's clear the grassy knoll. Let's grab some of the usual suspects. Let's line them all up here. I mean, the game that was played there, because I haven't seen them catch anybody else. And you can't tell me it's not happening. So far in the postseason, it's been so much fun, and the postseason is so random. I don't think a player. I think if you play at this level, there's far less of a chance, since you can make money now on the other 162. There's far less of a chance that a player would throw away a chance at glory. Like back in 1919.
No, not in the playoffs. The scrutiny is too high in the playoffs,
but think about
too.
But think about it. Back in 1919, the money was only there with the gamblers at the World Series. Nobody's betting on the Sunday game for them to make any money.
No, not at all.
But now the money's sitting there for 162. So I think the playoffs are probably, in all sports, far more accurate, and far less of that is happening because you can make so much money on the little games that nobody's paying any attention to. That's how I would think that it would work. Is that you make your hay on one of these side bets or one of these BS little things that are floating out there on FanDuel or one of these other things like that on a game on a Tuesday that nobody's paying any attention to. You don't do it under the bright lights of the postseason.
No, not at all. Look, postseason baseball, I mean, getting back to what we were talking about and how, the ALDS series and the are lining up and they're great. The thing as a fan you got to put up with if it's not your team is you're going to have some homerism, you're going to have some favoritism for the bigger market teams. The Dodgers are going to get a lot of love. The Yankees are going to get a lot of love. The national broadcasters aren't going to know as much about the Tigers or the Guardians. They're going to know some things about the Padres because they're a West Coast team, but if you're a flyover team, forget it. The Royals, I don't even know that much about the Royals, and I watched them this year. You're going to have some of that, but what you're getting on the field is really one of the purest products. And I think that's where people fall in love with baseball again in the postseason is you have not only the most talented teams making it usually, right? But you also have, the stakes are so much higher that guys are playing at their best. I mean, every once in a while you see somebody who's really scuffling, but you get guys who come through with heroics. You get guys who are really locked in and really focused. The pitchers are throwing just a little bit harder and they're throwing, a little bit more rotation on that curveball. They're trying to squeeze every ounce out of it. The batters are really locked in. They're really trying to get something done.
Nobody's phoning it in. Nobody's having a day where they're like, I'm done today, or I'm gonna half-ass it, or I'm not gonna dive for that ball, or I got to protect my body. Like everything is ramped up in the postseason. I mean, the postseason baseball is baseball at its purest and its best.
And it's a beautiful thing to watch if you can get past some of the announcers. But I agree with you that it's what you're seeing really too here is you're not seeing anybody who is trying to do something on the sides with these games, right? This is Kerry Carpenter, little Kerry Carpenter in his backyard, picturing himself hitting a walk-off homer in a playoff game. 3-2, it's so close, and then he tosses a ball up to himself and he kind of barely puts one over his back fence. And that's the dream, right? That's what every kid who loves baseball has ever done. And he just got to live it, granted, not in the World Series, not even in the ALCS, but in a playoff game. So you can't tell me that's not one of those moments where you look at it and go, wow, this is like the purity of sport. And one of the reasons why baseball is so beautiful too is because it is such an individual achievement and moment in that sense that you can't have something where you have, like in the NFL, whether you believe the officials are impacting it or not, but if you had watched Caleb Williams make some ridiculously amazing play, get out of trouble, make a throw on the run, practically blind for a touchdown, it would have been, a highlight play no matter what, and then it gets called back because well, the right tackle's left hand was a little too high on the shoulder pads or something like that. You see stuff like that in other sports. No, that was Emmanuel Clase and Kerry Carpenter, mano a mano. Let's go.
And Carpenter figured out the pitch. Because he had to reach out there. He had to go low and outside to go get that ball. To get that ball out of the ballpark, he guessed right. Or as we've seen earlier, we have very intense coaches too in the postseason. They're paying attention to film, looking for tells, and you wonder if there was a tell because he understood where that ball was going because either that's the luckiest swing ever or he had a good idea. It was an informed guess or it was that he likes to throw this in this situation. But that was preparation, something that the White Sox have to work on. And you brought up a great point about why I still think baseball is the greatest sport there is. Baseball is the greatest sport there is because of what you just brought up. Because I love football and I'm excited about the Bears and I think they're going to be so much fun and I watch them every Sunday and I love watching football as a fan. But that right there, which you brought up, the idea that there's a penalty on every play, it just depends on whether or not the refs decide to call it. And that's what makes it so controllable. And that's what makes it feel so cheap when a flag brings something back. Because I guarantee you there was something on the play before that, but they let it go.
When a flag doesn't fly where it's really obvious, it's just so controllable.
And baseball is mainly left out there to the players on the field. And, we get a little bit of human error from umpires. And like I said, I think on a random Tuesday, you probably get some shenanigans because I just don't believe in pro sports. The way that gambling has worked within this country over the last decade, I just don't believe in it. I don't think you can keep that integrity. But I think in the off season, when there's less motivation to do that, and you've made your money over 162 if you are doing that, everybody's on their game and there's camera angles from everywhere, and it's far more risky to do it. And the fact that it is really left to the players on the field, it's why it's the greatest sport there is. Because think about it, soccer. I can go with European football, otherwise known as soccer. Okay, you could pull up a card for anything. I've watched a soccer game before. I've seen the exact same play where a guy slides in and takes out somebody's legs and makes a great play. I've seen that get let go, and I've seen that be a card. I've seen penalty shots that I'm like, well, that doesn't make any sense. I just watched something earlier where the exact same thing happened. Everything is so much more controllable, but in baseball, it's the individual. Yes, you're on a team, but it's the individual against the individual, the batter and the pitcher at one point that becomes so pure. And then when the ball is hit, there are 8 other guys not involved in the play until the player the ball is coming to makes the play. And then if he needs to involve somebody else, then it's going to one other guy, right? So there aren't all these other variables where penalties and weird stuff can pop up. It's a very individualistic game played within a team in which there is less of a chance of somebody interfering with it. Like in basketball, suddenly it's a charge. Suddenly, there was a hand that came in. You could see a guy get all ball and they'll be like, no, we think that his pinky finger touched the other guy's pinky finger, right? Like you can see a million different factors that can happen. There's far less of that in baseball. I think that's what makes it so enjoyable because you are watching these individual competitions between batter and pitcher and player and circumstance and pressure of the fans. And you're out there on an island in a lot of ways trying to do something great. That I think is what makes baseball the best sport there is. It may not get the ratings, but it's the best sport.
Absolutely.
Sox in the Basement listeners trying to make the most of your money, give a call to Tom Walsh, your Edward Jones financial advisor. Located on the corner of 111th and Kedzie, but serving the Chicagoland area, Tom has a get-to-know-you approach and a do-the-right-thing attitude. He's been doing this for decades. It's all about knowing your options when you're investing and planning for your retirement. No matter what stage you are at, it costs nothing to check in with Tom. Give Tom Walsh, your Edward Jones financial advisor, a call today, 773-779-0023. Edward Jones, member SIPC. So something I wanted to get to on the last show, and we still got a few minutes to do it, is I wanted to talk a little bit about the Sox when it comes to pitching for next year.
Yeah.
And
yeah, we should actually talk about the White Sox here. We've only mentioned Shoeless Joe Jackson this entire show.
I got Shoeless Joe in there, and I talked about the 05 thing. So there was some White Sox in there.
That's true.
There's some White Sox stuff in there. Okay, so I was looking at the White Sox pitching setup, and I know I've talked about on the show before that their strength is their pitching. Not only do I believe that they don't need to necessarily go out and get somebody for the rotation. You could do it. If you see something similar to Fetty and you think that you can bring this person in to be one of the 5 starters and they can be flipped for a prospect in 2025, then I'm all for it. But it's not a necessary thing. I think that your rotation is pretty clear right now, at least 4 of them. You have Garrett Crochet. Until he's traded, he's ours at a very low price tag. And I got to be honest with you, like, I'm still keeping him. I know they want to move him, still keeping him. But if they move him, they better get a haul. They better get something.
It's got to be insane.
It's got to be. I mean, seriously, for his control and what he did, it's got to be better than what they got for Cease. That's how I feel like with his control. It's got to be equal to or better.
No, better than Cease. I honestly think Crochet, given the circumstances, that's got to be almost a let's populate the team.
Right, and it's got to be hitters, okay? Because at this point, you've got to hold somebody up, or otherwise you don't move him because he's at an affordable value, and you may long-term appreciate having him on your team, especially if he's open to an extension. He does extension, and he gives you a couple extra years of control. I sign it, because what are you planning on, being bad for a decade? Keep him. So you have Crochet at a 1.07 walks and hits per innings pitched on the season. That's insane.
That really is.
That's like a closer's whip.
That's cartoon.
Right, that's a cartoon whip. That's an absolute ace of staff. Dylan Cease never had that. And even with his bad second half, I mean, he went 6-12 with a 3.58 ERA, and he couldn't pitch past 4 innings because he had never pitched that many innings. But his effectiveness of keeping guys off base never wavered. And he got 209 strikeouts to 33 walks. I mean, the guy's an absolute stud. I don't know why you'd move him, but he's in your rotation right now. Sean Burke is the only guy with a better whip. Now, he only played in 4 games, and he started 3 of them. But he went 2-0 in those games with a 1.42 earned run average, 22 strikeouts to 7 walks. That's a great ratio. Opponents hit 174 against him. I just talked about Crochet. Opponents hit 222 against him. Burke was at 174. His walks and hits per innings pitched, and even 1. Now, he's in. And I know it's a small sample size, but you got to pencil him into your rotation. You pencil in Drew Thorpe with a 1.26 whip. Yes, he struggled. Yes, he had a few off games, but the talent is there, and you traded for that, and you've got to develop that and keep that in. So those 3 guys right there, those 3 guys are locks in your rotation in my mind next year, and Jonathan Cannon did enough. I mean, a 1.33 whip. He had 91 strikeouts to 40 walks. He had a 4.49 earned run average. He pitched 124 innings, though, and what were we always hearing about him? Like, James Fox came on from Future Sox. Elijah Evans came on from Just Baseball. The prospect says all were like, he's not an ace, but he's definitely a 4 or 5. Well, those stats are 4th or 5th pitcher in a rotation, especially on a team that's building. So those 4 guys have to be in there. And then that 5th starter, again, if you don't get a Fetty, look at what you've got. I mean, you've got a couple of guys down the minors in Schultz and Smith that are both coming here at some point next year. I don't think you're going to be moving one of those other 4 out of the way. So you have an abundance of pitching, and then you have all these other guys that are floating in there, like Iriarte looked sharp. What if you make him into a starter to start off the year? Maybe he gets the 5th spot. Maybe give Nastrini another chance, although I don't think that that's actually going to work out for them, right? Jake Eater's sitting down there. You think that he may be a starter at some point. There's so many different names. Not only do I believe they have enough for a rotation, Ed, but they have enough to deal one of those names for a bat. They can do a high-end prospect pitcher for a high-end prospect bat very easily. And that, I think, has to be the goal this year.
Well, yeah, you're not looking at this from a standpoint of, as a White Sox fan anyway, you shouldn't be looking at this. I say you're not, but you really shouldn't be, because some people are, I'm sure. But you can't look at this from the standpoint of, do we have 5 aces, right? Do we have 5 guys who are going to throw complete games in an ALCS? Except for one guy who's going to, we're going to need to dust off Neil Kotz for 2/3. It's not going to be that way. What you're doing is you're sitting here saying, okay, Garrett Crochet is a legitimate ace. Drew Thorpe pitched at times like a legitimate ace, but he also pitched like a rookie who's finding his way.
You get 2 or 3 starter out of him this year, you should be pumped. You get numbers like that. You get Burke. Burke isn't going to do that for the whole year next year, but if he looks like a clear middle of rotation guy, then you're pumped. If somehow he looks like a top 3 guy, you're really excited.
Yeah, if Burke and Cannon look like 2 number 4s, then that's okay. Okay. Because you don't necessarily need it to be, that clear cut.
Right. Because Noah Schultz is going to come up and be a top end rotation guy.
Exactly. If you've got a pretty clear cut 1 and 2 in Crochet, and if Thorpe develops into a 2 or 3, top 3 guy, like you said, Schultz is going to come up, and he's kind of that next wave. You've got a number of other prospects that can come up. If you find 2 or 3 guys who look like a solid number 4, maybe number 3 on a certain team kind of a guy, that's good. That's depth. Okay. And that's something that you can then turn around and sit there and say, yeah, you know what? We really do need to address this other position. We need to find something else here. Let's go. Let's take one of these guys and go get it. Okay. It's the reverse of what they did with Jake Berger, where that's what Miami did. They looked at Jake Eater and they said, we got all these other pitchers. We don't necessarily need this guy anymore. Maybe we don't believe in him quite as much anymore as we used to. And so we're going to go out and do something that we need to do, which is we need a guy who can hit home runs in Miami. Jake Berger was that guy. So that's the type of thing that you're looking for the White Sox to do this offseason. And that's where Chris Getz's trade bait is going to have to come from, and his ammunition to go out and do something if he's not going to get free agents. This is not quite the team that is in a position to say, let's go sign a secondary ace. Let's pair somebody up with Garrett Crochet. And to your point about trading Crochet, I think it's got to be hitters primarily. But honestly, if I'm going to trade a pitcher of Crochet's caliber, I want to get back a pitcher that has a chance to rise to a top end of the rotation guy too. In that, I want to get a little bit of replacement value for him, the way Cease got us Drew Thorpe, who, and I know if you're going to stack up Drew Thorpe's numbers against Dylan Cease last year, they're not going to look right. But
yeah, but long term, that might actually be a good deal. Like long term,
exactly.
You look at what Iriarte did, and you look at what Thorpe did in their first run through with us. Like Cease is an ace. We said it all off season. Like everybody's worried about, we got to trade him now before his value goes down. I was like, I think his value is going to go up, especially when he leaves this team. And that's what happened. I mean, he's an absolute
completely.
stud. He always was a stud pitcher, and you're gonna miss him whenever you see him out there pitching. But he was not going to be signable because of the way that this team operates when he got to free agency. So they did the right thing with him. If Crochet is really open to an extension, they have to talk to him because you have to retain guys sometimes. And like I said, you've got a ton of payroll flexibility right now because you're going to walk in with $32.1 million or something like that that's actually on the books between 2 players. Everybody else is ARB eligible. And you got a couple $1 million that are sitting on deferred things. I think it's about $3.5 million between and
something like that,
you got 5.5 for the guys you got to buy out. But I mean, like, you're sitting around at $40 million right now in payroll going into the year, $45 million. And so to be at the bottom of baseball, if we don't count the A's, where that's malfeasance, you can go up to 90. The room is there to extend him. And you know what? If I were Getz, I'd be extending him and front loading the contract. I'd be like, you know what? We are going to extend you. We're going to extend you. We want this to be the overall number, but we're going to front load it because we've got so much room in the payroll this year. Because later on, 3-4 years from now, we're going to need that payroll flexibility because of my cheap owner.
Exactly.
Like, that's what I would do with Crochet. Like, I would try to extend him, and I'd be like, here is the deal. It's 5 years at this, or 6 years at this, or whatever we're going to do. If you really want to extend him, and let's say don't believe in him, if they wanted to extend him, but then entice him with the idea of you're going to get the money first. You're getting it early. Like, that might be the thing that puts you over the top. They might actually get you the hometown discount. Here I am. I'm working out deals late in the show. Something to discuss on the next episode of Sox in the Basement. Sound good?
Sounds good.
Sox in the basement. Sox in the basement. Sox in the basement.
Sox in the Basement. Heard everywhere podcasts can be found, and always on soxinthebasement.com.